Hey there, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. Like this announced, I am Kathy DeLano. I am with Dixie, Pulp and Paper. I am currently the Vice President of Paper Stock Industries and the Chair for the Paper Division for ReMA. However, at the end of the convention in 2 days, I will be rolling off of that and I will be the incoming President for Paper Stock Industries. So I'm very, very excited, a little nervous, but I'm very excited about that. But today we have 3 great speakers here with us. We'll be discussing kind of some trends in the paper market, where things are going, where things have been. It should be pretty informative. We're going to hold questions until the end. So if you think of a question, and please think of a question, write it down so we can be prepared. So we'll start with our first speaker, who is Brian Holtz. Brian Holtz is the Chief Commercial Officer of the Wilmington Group, where he heads the commercial strategy and performance across the company's brokerage and recycling plants enterprise. He has more than 25 years of experience in the recycling industry, and he has held senior leadership roles spanning national accounts, operations, and commercial transformations. Prior to joining Wilmington, Brian spent over a decade with International Paper, where he led the national accounts and recycling plants in the West, Midwest, and Mexico. He started his career at Illinois State University, where he developed the recycling program from the ground up. He is well recognized for driving operational excellence, building high-performance teams, and developing customer-focused strategies that deliver sustainable goals. Brian holds an MBA and bachelor's degree in environmental health from Illinois State University. Brian.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to focus more of my discussion on the high-grade markets, grades like SOP, white ledgers, the SPS grades. I think the big thing that as we think about these grades is that, demand remains very strong. The market's structurally tighter, not a cyclical market. And supply continues to decline as we see less and less generation of office pack. And so the global trade flows now really impact, what's driving the market trends and overall pricing. So I'll get into more specifics around that, but that's going to be my focus for today. So high quality fiber remains essential despite continued advances in our industry. There's really limited substitution for these grades in the manufacturing side. You can substitute pulp and use virgin pulp in lieu of recycled fiber, but as that price gets non-competitive, they move to the recycling grades, and they want the sustainability story to say, hey, this material is manufactured from recycled content material. So there still remains significant demand for this material despite continuing low generation of the material. This next slide really, I think it shows the difference, and I know Josh will hit on the brown grades, but it really is meant to demonstrate that de-inking quality fiber generates a higher pricing structure than packaging fibers that are brown. And so that structural premium for white grades, de-inking grades, is significantly different and higher than the brown grades. This really is the spread between high grades and brown grades really shows a difference between that, and the premium for high grades, and it's very stable. So continuing to see, this structural demand for this material is really important. And this next slide really gets into showing I use the fast markets SOP price, and then just use some structural export demands that shows the impact that export has for the pricing for this grade of material. The floor pricing is in that 115 to 130 range, but the takeaway really here is as export continues to show significant fluctuation, it's going to impact the overall pricing. Domestic mills do consume and impact pricing, but as more and more global consumption of this grade of material by India, Latin America, China, they're going to impact the pricing for this grade of material overall. As I noted, the decline on this material, 3 to 5% annually. I work remotely. I don't generate a lot of material, office paper material. The big generators are, the document destruction companies. And so there's just scarce raw material and supply available, yet there's a lot of competition globally for the material. So it's really shifting the markets, and tissue demand continues to be the biggest as more and more the population, human population continues to grow across the globe, and third world countries get introduced to tissue. I can remember being in some third world countries, and you just see different tissue products, but as they get introduced to it, it's a whole new world, and there's just going to continue to be. And then also, as more and more of us age and need more and more medicine, that type of SBS packaging grades that they use in the production really supports this grade of material as well. One of the biggest things is the shift from China to different markets. India and Latin America continue to support the market for this grade versus the U.S. And while there are U.S. demand, you have to have that global market demand to support it. So while, again, as I've said, the domestic mills will compete for this fiber because of the limited substitution, there's structural imbalance to support strong demand and pricing for this material. Expect that demand will continue. We've seen here recently, even over the last several months, as index has gone up for this grade of material. You will continue, we expect, as global demand increases, particularly in India and Latin America, that they will support that and structurally support that material grade. So as we adapt to a tighter fiber market, you have to, manage through price volatility. But and this really kind of just shows China going through it. And really what I want, to lead with is focusing on the high quality and having good supply streams. Mills are going to want access to this material. So continued volatility and structural premiums for this grade will continue as we move forward. And having access to the global markets as well as the U.S. markets will be important for generators of the material. It's going to continue to decline as technology continues to advance. You use more and more technology and, computers, iPads. This year I bought one of the Amazon scribes where you can now take notes from, and pen, writes just like you're writing on paper. I mean, seeing more and more. I've got a 26-year-old son, and I couldn't tell you the last time he used a notebook to write anything down on. It's all technology driven. The global trade will continue to shift and will continue to increase, and that will drive continued demand for the material and structural support for this grade of material. So I'll turn it over to Josh.
Awesome. Thank you. That was great. Interesting. Appreciate that. I have to say I work remote as well, but I use a lot of paper. Like it's kind of a mess in my office, so it's a little embarrassing, but I'm supporting the industry. Okay, so our next speaker is Josh Starrett. He has worked for International Paper for the past 28 years. And if you're bad at math like me, that means he started in 1998, just to help y'all out. He spent, I can't take credit for that. He spent his first 14 years in the company working in various finance, sales, and marketing roles with IP's paper and pulp businesses. In 2012, he started working in IP's recycling business and has served as commercial and operational positions such as Director of Plant Operations, Recycling, and Regional General Manager. He is currently the strategy lead for International Paper's recycling business. With that, I'll turn it over to Josh.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Good to be here with you all and my fellow panelists. This morning I went to the opening session and Peter Sheehan talked about transformation, and his perspective on that was really interesting because at International Paper, we find ourselves in the midst of a transformation. So we've definitely moved to being more a customer-centric business. Here's our mission. Together, we create sustainable packaging solutions that enable our customers, teammates, and share owners to thrive in an ever-changing world. And I highlight ever-changing, as you all have seen over the past, it feels like 18 months. It's been a lot going on. Our values line up really well with ReMA. I did enjoy the opening session. Mike Marino talked about safety and, safety above all at International Paper. We talk about trust. He leaned into that when he was talking about follow. But we think of that through character and competency. And then, we're going to try to win with our customers and deliver best in class results. So, at IP, just as most of you guys know, in the recycling space, we fit in there we offer, recycling services through our recycling plants, our national accounts, and brokerage. The big thing around what we do is we partner up with, our packaging business and providing solutions for those guys. So serving all those different markets. But, I thought that for this session, supply demand has been, a big topic within our industry, and just kind of take you through how we've been thinking about some stuff in terms of that. So, when you look at what happened in the macro economy, and, this has been a ride, but, we've definitely seen inflation cool since the peaks of 2022. So this is a look at, the inflation on services is up there at 3.4%. You see the index there right in the middle, and then goods have been, have cooled a little bit, even more significantly. So when you're coming off like 8% highs, it was good to see the reading. I think that what we saw last Friday is a little bit concerning, but we'll get into that. In that, when you look into inflation, I think that as you go into the different segments, it's definitely different. Food at home, that's one where you've seen companies continue to raise prices, especially the brand companies. Their prices are up, but their volumes are down. And a lot of that's just driven based on affordability. Even as people have made reference to things about drugs that are now introduced about curbing appetite and all that. I don't know if I'll buy into that yet, but food away from home, that inflation's been a little bit stickier just because of that has a lot of labor impact in it. And you've seen that, and you see the service inflation. New autos and apparel, I would say that's followed more what you saw with COVID, the big run up. And then as things cooled off, people had ordered everything online, remodeled their home, remodeled their backyard, and done all of that. You definitely saw a destock. Even when we see inflation, in accounting for inflation, the consumers have continued to spend. This is just a look at that. So this is a real spending. So pretty similar to what we saw just on an actual basis. I think that this continues to play a big role. So, when you hear about box demand, people are always leaning into what's going on with e-commerce. So, your overall total retail and trade, the CAGR on that, here recently, or the growth has been about 4.4%. It's traditionally been about 6%, so a little bit weaker. E-commerce, it continues to level off just because, it's explosive growth, starting out and, you see 30% numbers, but as it becomes a bigger part of, the retail economy. Looking ahead, though, when you look at growth over the next 5 years, some people would say that it's still going to be about half of the growth. So it's not as big of a number in terms of growth, but as it becomes more of the spend, it becomes more important to box demand. This one is, again, when you think about box demand growth, it's about our people spending money. And when you look at this, what you look at on the left-hand side is people's disposable income growing. So month over month over month, is my income growing? And then, as my income grows, how much of that am I willing to spend? And so as you can see in this recent past, people have been willing to spend a little bit more than their income is growing, and they're doing that at the expense of savings. And you say, why would they be willing to do that? And I think that if you have your own beliefs, but, you can hear economists talk about, because people's portfolios have been rising, the value with the stock market and et cetera, that they're more confident as their value rises. I don't have to save as much. So, thinking about that into the future, I think what's concerning about that potentially is, consumer sentiment. It's been a little bit off. And, when people think about, their wealth and how much they're willing to spend versus save, and especially with the shock in the economy, the volatility in the market. So how much is this going to be going to be able to be continued as you see more volatility? So those are some factors that we look into when we're thinking about box demand growth. So how did it track? So if you'd have talked to us, International Paper, coming into 2025, we used different people look at this for us. Everybody was saying that the box market was going to grow. So these are a few pundits, but call it somewhere between 1% and 3%. And, when you look at what actually happened in 2025, or when we were coming into this, if you follow this line, and Brian had a chart there with pricing, and it talked about a correction on pricing. A lot of what happened with box demand, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, it was all about that build up, people during COVID buying a lot of stuff. And then once the supply chains got full, there was this big destocking period. But we went through a sharp decline in 2022, a decline in 2023. And as 2024 finished the year, I think negative 1.8, negative 1.4 for all of North America. We were thinking that, that 2025 was going to be a better year. This is where we landed. Like I said, negative 1.8. I can't show this, and I've seen something recently, but when you look at our customers' volumes, our big customers' volumes, like if you look at a heat map of that, there was a lot of red in 2025. So while we were optimistic coming in that there was going to be recovery back to positive growth, it just didn't happen for our customers. And I recently saw something that reemphasized that, where as much as some of these big companies being down 3 to 5%. So, when you look at a big market like the box market, that's pretty substantial. So 2025, we thought was going to be a better year. It wasn't. How are we thinking about 2026? Here are some key variables. Population, when I've shown this to some people, kind of has shocked them because they've never seen that. But when you look into that, it's like, birth rate minus deaths, normal immigration, and what they call other immigration in some of these charts. And that's definitely based on some of the changes that have happened there, where they think population may be a little bit of a headwind in 26 versus 25. Spoke a little bit to food consumption, but a lot of kind of, a little bit of down, a lot of sideways, not much up. Again, when you look at the pundits, you're anywhere from, -2 to +3. I most recently saw Numera as a pretty reliable, outfit. They've revised their outlook for 2026 to 0.9. So a slight revision. And I don't know how much of what the recent events they've taken into account, but just call it 1%, on the conservative side. So, really, we're not going to call the market. We can't call the market. If we tried to call the market, we'd be wrong. We kind of had this view coming into 2025. It did not play out. 2026, there's some signs out there that point to life, but definitely what's happened in March, everybody's kind of waiting to see what happens. So anyway, I'll look forward to your questions after Jason. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Right.
That's interesting. I didn't know that about the about people spending, based on what they see in the market. Like even though their incomes are going down, they're still spending based because they have what they've got invested.
It's a theory.
A theory. That's interesting though. Okay. All right. Sorry. I broke my rules. We'll do questions at the end. Okay. So our next speaker is Jason Pelz. Jason has been in the recycling business his entire life, literally. So when he was born, his family was already operating the Pelz Group.
It's true.
Where he helped throughout his childhood and college years. After graduating, he worked for Georgia Pacific's original recycling operations, and then he returned to his family's business to oversee its national brokerage accounts. He continued that role after Waste Management acquired the Pelz Group, later managing WM's exports to China and eventually becoming its director of commodity export. In 2012, Jason started working for Tetra Pak, where he now serves as the vice president of sustainability in the U.S. and Canada. He is also vice president of recycling for the Carton Council. This group seeks to increase availability of carton recycling in the U.S. and Canada. Without further ado, Jason.
Thank you, Kathy. Hi, everybody. So this is going to come at you a little bit different than the other folks because being a converter and really what we're focused on as a company is making sure that food can be delivered to folks safe and available. Really, the point is it can be delivered safe and available everywhere. And the company's motto is really protecting what's good. So this is going to talk about really a segment, which is paper-based food and beverage packaging. I can't talk about the whole food packaging market because I honestly don't know enough about the whole market, but this will hopefully give you a little bit of an idea of what we are seeing with trends. So Tetra Pak, many of you may know us by the package, but we actually do a bit more than that. We do testing, we do processing, creating recipes. We build the filling machines. We have downstream, but basically we're a full service provider for the food and beverages industry. Company's global. Our corporate headquarters sit in Lausanne. The U.S. is our second largest market in the globe. It's a company that's been around since the middle 50s. The gentleman who created the original Tetra Pak had the idea of a package should save more than it costs. So the idea was, how do we get something like milk delivered to people who have no refrigeration? And a paper-based package was the right package to do that with. This is what you know us by typically. So our package, the traditional aseptic package, is primarily paperboard. Then you have the aluminum layer, which is what keeps the oxygen and light out. And then the polymer layers, which obviously prevents moisture and leakage. But what the package allows then for in an aseptic carton is once a product's inside of it, it has the strength and capability to keep something at shelf stable temperature. So room temperature, something like milk can sit for 8 to 12 months, which is a pretty important aspect of what this package is to do, which is, again, to deliver a product safe and available anywhere. I should go back real quick. The other package we also make is the gable top package, which those of us who grew up in the United States know very well, the traditional milk carton. The biggest difference between the two is it's just fiber with polymer on both sides. But because of that, it requires refrigeration through distribution and when it gets to your house. So the benefits of shelf-stable carton packaging, I mentioned earlier about the lack of need for refrigeration, and this includes milk. I can tell a story that I went to Vietnam once. A customer of ours, all they do is milk, and they have a warehouse that is not air-conditioned in Vietnam. 98 degrees, we are sweating, and all this stuff is safe. And so it's a very amazing package in what it can do. It's mainly made of renewable materials. It's recyclable. Because of the attributes of having extended shelf life, it can reduce food waste. Plus, it's convenient and lightweight. These packages ship in roll form, and they're filled in line. So it prevents having to pre-form the package ahead of time. So to talk about trends, and I'm going to talk in completely different terms than you've all heard. This is not a discussion of tons and pounds. It's millions of liters. But to talk about trends and what we are seeing in the liquid food and beverage consumption categories, and I promise I will go through the acronyms because it makes me crazy when people don't. Food supplement nutrition. So the first column would be something like an Ensure or something like that. Value-added milk would be an A2 milk or an ultra-filtered milk. Dairy cream is self-explanatory. Ready-to-drink alcohols, you see more things now coming, wines and things like that. Broth is broth, and human food is typically soup. And then on the products where we're seeing a decline, a call out on coffee, what we're seeing a decline in coffee is not straight up coffee, but coffee that's sweetened. So people are getting away from heavy sugared products. White milk, there's a decline. Tea, juice and nectars, plant-based products as well. Flavored milk and then wet pet food is actually something that we're seeing declines in. But this is the space where the paper-based packaging can play in when we're talking about trends with consumers. And then the additional consumer trend that we're seeing, that really jump out to us, when it comes to lifestyle, people clearly flexible work, e-commerce, hobbies and lifestyles. In that one, it's interesting. People are becoming far more, a hobby's not just a hobby anymore. People are jumping in with both feet and really getting into whatever that is. Health and wellness, I just talked about the sugary coffee drinks. People are starting to steer clear of salt, sugar. GLP-1s are having an effect on what we're seeing in food and beverage packaging. Mental health, protein is, if you all go to the store, everything now has a protein variant that you can get. We've seen that a ton. There's more folks focusing on alcohol-free. On the social piece, sustainability, as we all know, legislation, I'll get into some of what we're doing on the end of life, but with legislation, clearly not everybody gets along anymore. And technology is becoming a key thing. I try to say that as nicely as possible. But accelerated trends, again, healthy, clean labels, e-commerce. And then what we see with the winners and losers is along what I shared earlier, water and packaging, tea, broth, a little bit, food on the go. But then from the decline, we're seeing, FP as family packs. So smaller packs are becoming more interesting to folks. Kids, juice and nectars are actually declining a little bit. So this is what we're seeing. And then what does that mean when you get to the shelf? So this is from our point of view as Tetra Pak, but it would really be any food and beverage, liquid food and beverage packaging company. This is where you will see these items. And, I didn't know anything about Tetra Pak till I came to work for the company. In other parts of the world, people know a lot about this kind of packaging. And so, when I talk about food and beverage packaging and specifically paper-based, the opportunity for growth is there. The opportunities are there. It's very present. You just don't always see it. So the next thing I thought I'd cover is, so we're primarily paper-based package, but we're also looking at innovation, and that some of that innovation is adding more paper into the package. I mentioned the aluminum layer within our package, and that's a key layer. That without that layer, you could not have an aseptic package and have the food longevity within that package as you would without it. So there's work being done on, could we take that layer and turn it into a paper-based layer, which we have done in a few parts of the world. The biggest benefit that brings right now, the aluminum layer is about 40% of the carbon footprint of our package. If you take that and make it paper, it drops it dramatically. So these are some of the innovation things that we're working on. And again, it's paper focused. We're at the Recycled Materials Association meeting. I would be remiss to not talk a little bit about sustainability, being that it's my job. But to show this, the company really takes a look at everything holistically. And for us, so how we source the fiber, how we source the board, where the fiber comes from, but then throughout the entire life cycle of what happens. And that then brings us to the recycling piece and to the end of life. And, in the US and Canada, different from what we do in much of the world, we work through a trade organization called the Carton Council. And this is a trade organization made up of 3 of our competitors. It's pre-competitive. And basically, we work with the value chain. So be it end markets or paper mills, the MRFs, to try to drive collection, sorting, and baling and recycling of cartons. So that's his Carton Council. But I think the more important thing to bring up is that even though I talk to you only about food and beverage packaging, we also work with the bigger family of food and beverage packaging. So the work that we are also doing in the poly-coated paper lines is because there's a lot of likenesses. So be it paper cups, be it spiral containers. What we're doing in this group, you know, in Tetra Pak through the Carton Council is engaged, is really trying to find synergies to help improve the end of life and solutions for these products. No, they're not going to all go together necessarily, but there's probably solutions that can be done that can be learned from it. So what you see here is some of the work that's being done, who the various partners are of the organization. And that's all I have for you.
Awesome. Oh, I don't use them.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll put it away. Okay. Awesome. That was interesting. Thank you, Jason. So some questions I came up with, and we'll get to y'all here. As a moderator, I get to go first. My first question, and in no particular order, is how do you see AI affecting the various commodities you spoke of? In terms of folks using, sites like ChatGPT or other AI sources, as opposed to going to the library or, looking at books, or have you really seen effects on that as far as AI? Anyone?
I think it's early, you're seeing a lot of AI adoption, more and more as we move from 25 to 26. But to see the full impacts, like on the high grades, I think you will, but the people will shift from you, and they've already been doing it with the onset of internet and computer research and things of that nature. It's just going to enhance that. So I just think we've seen a lot of that. I think people are still going to want to read books for pleasure, and so I think is the adoption of the iPads and the Kindles and electronic books to read for pleasure are having more of an impact than AI. I think it's companies now using AI to do things such as, automations, efficiencies, that's where you see a lot of big impact with AI.
True. What about, and that's a good point. What about just automation in general at the manufacturing plant or the mills? Do you see more of that coming online, or is that something where people can't be replaced, or what do you guys?
Well, I think in our business, when you think about serving customers, our mills, they're 24/7 operations. And so reliability is, paramount. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of what people try to do with AI is more about predictive maintenance versus, it's not about replacing, human capital and people that operate the things in general. It's more about giving them the data so that they can make sure that the machines are most reliable. I do think that, when you look at trying to be customer centric, there's always something to be said for how can you, better understand your customer's demand. I mean, a lot of customers, give us forecasts and all of that, and that'll continue. But when you think about that, there can be a lot of volatility in that. They may be hedging something, but really having that, cutting edge look at demand is something that, I don't know if anything specific, but I know more about the maintenance that I spoke to has been something that we've looked into.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, we see it, just even like with drivers that come to pick up loads. I mean, in the old days, it would come with, a big stack of paperwork, but now everybody's got their phone or they got an app, and you just, so I mean, just little things like that start to add up over time with less paper usage. Okay. So, moving on. So we talked a little bit about the COVID years and how much fun that was. But during COVID, in addition to the large demand for tissue, paper towels, everybody remembers that when you couldn't get toilet paper and people were fighting over it. We saw a big influx of packaging demand as people were ordering goods, like you talked about. They were staying home. There was stimulus money that fueled tangible items to be bought. They bought things like, iPhones and TVs, things that come in a box. But now we see a shift in how people spend their money. They're tending to spend their money more on experiences like, vacations or concerts or theme parks, rather than buying things that are packaged. But what are you guys seeing, and how is that affecting your market, or have you seen much effect from that?
So just looking at the broad economic data, there's definitely, consumers did a lot to, like I mentioned earlier, everybody remodeled their kitchen and, orders online and all that stuff. And the e-business continues to be healthy. I think when you look at consumer spending, the one thing that is concerning right now, and I'm not speaking for IP because this is recent data, but just when you look into it, they're spending more money unevenly. So a big share of the pocket is like healthcare because of the rising costs. So when you think about goods, as an IP employee and wanting to see box growth, you do worry about when there's that type of, uneven growth, if you will. And you've seen that in the job market. The job market was absolutely flat last year, 0.1% increase. But when you looked into that, there was a couple of winning segments, some stuff around healthcare, AI, and then you look in other places and there was actually where it declined. So when you look at just the headline number, it's a mixed bag for sure.
What are you seeing?
Well, what I was going to say from a experience standpoint, what we're seeing with some of our customers is they're beginning to use the package as a way to tell a story. So we're actually seeing a bit more interest in marketing campaigns where, you can really tie it to a movie, tie it to a whatever, really to kind of generate an interest across a much broader spectrum. The second thing, and I had mentioned it a little bit, I think what's also changed is just, GLP-1, for example, didn't exist. Now all of a sudden it is. And there's a reason, I believe, and as would many, I assume, that a lot of people want protein drinks now because, you've got people on drugs that are making them eat less. So they need more calorie dense or protein dense things. So what I would say maybe more has changed is just some of the tastes and demands.
Yeah, that's true. You've seen that. Any thoughts on any of that, or?
I think as people shift and go for those experience based, it then becomes to, using tissue related products and away from home versus home tissue products. Even here, you use a hand dryer, or do you grab a paper towel to dry your hands? Continue to see that demand for, people wanting a paper towel to, from a health and safety standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. I hope so. We hope that continues to be a trend. Okay. So my last question, and I'll turn it over to you guys, is, export question. So the Iranian war is obviously dominating headlines, causing ripple effects across the globe. So I'm thinking how this is going to trickle down to us because, as in the paper industry, we always kind of seem to see these things first, changes in the economy. But, for example, India is facing a potential energy crisis, which is driven by the disruption of the crucial oil and gas supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. And based on this, I'm speculating that could affect, backlog of paper that was going to be going there. So mills aren't obviously going to be running with this, energy crisis going on. And this could start to clog up domestic markets. So I guess my question is, how are you guys looking at the Iran related conflict, and how it could disrupt global paper exports, manufacturing, and how should we in the paper industry be prepared?
I'll go first. I think you have to continuously think about global shifts in demand, as I showed on my presentation. China national sword. We had to react to that, and similar to this, well, it may be more short-term reaction and shifting. People are still going to need tissue products. Demand for high grades is still going to be there, but production may shift from India to other countries. And so being able to have access to those other countries and shift your supply, if you're a supplier of it, to those other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think in the immediate term, the as you read RISI and what have you, and people are noting that supplies constrained, generations constrained, I think you still see the people that are importing U.S. fiber being willing to stick with it because they see the strength on the U.S. side. So kind of counter to what you're saying. I think if it persists, my biggest, personally, I just, again, worry about the energy shock. And so it's back to, there was an article in RISI the other day that was talking about everybody is, or maybe it was the Wall Street Journal, but everybody's putting a fuel surcharge on everything. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, that flows to the consumer. So 5 minutes ago, I'm complaining about I'm having to spend too much money in healthcare. And now another stream is going to fuel surcharges. Ultimately, it just leaves us less money to spend on maybe some of the stuff we want.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing to add, I would say, is that, on the fuel surcharge or on the freight, even though it's an immediate effect on shipping, you still got to get the container to the port, and those trucks still fight. I mean, the people fighting for those trucks are also fighting for domestic trucks. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, we, from our production standpoint, we have to ship product to customers to fill, and, trucks that were easier are now harder. People cancel, freight goes up, and no one's immune to it.
Yeah. Driver shortage, all that fun stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a shortage on top of it. I mean, there was beforehand. So.
Yeah. Freight costs are definitely up significantly in the first quarter.
Yeah. Good times. Well, I will turn it over to you guys. You guys have questions? You have any thoughts? Make me call on people. Justin. Yeah.
Jim, so Brian, this is for you. You mentioned your slide.
Oh, do you want to go to the microphone? Okay.
Brian, for you mainly, you mentioned in your slide there was a 5% year-over-year decline in de-inking grades. What are tissue mills and others doing long term to kind of fill that gap? Is it more virgin, or kind of are they experimenting with other materials, or what's kind of long term trend of replacing that material?
Yeah, you see the experimentation with other grades of whether it's eucalyptus or hemp or other fibrous materials to try to produce, but ultimately they're going to continue to need, recycled fiber and pulp to make the strength and quality of product and hygiene products particularly to, support the growing population, for what they demand in a high quality product.
Can I add to that?
Okay.
I mean, we're seeing it from the food and beverage carton side, and even some of the other polycoated stuff. We are getting more calls of people asking, because if there's less office paper, it's a nice substitute.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess on that note, so shifting gears a little, EPR, how especially in your business, I know it's probably your favorite topic. We want to go there?
No, you're welcome to go there.
You went there.
Talking under my breath.
Well, on the recyclability and of your package, I guess, I think about we were talking about experiences and theme parks. Somebody has a protein drink. Where do they put that recycled in? Do they put that in the trash, or is that something that EPR is coming to you guys on?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's what we're working on. We work on access, so people have access to recycling, and then we work on making sure it's being sorted, and then that it has an end market. And so with EPR, the focus, I would say probably up until EPR, it was very much the work we did was a shotgun approach. Where did we have opportunities, and it didn't matter where it was. I would say what's really changed with EPR is our focus now is much more in those areas, regions, states, whatever you want to call it, where either there is legislation or the legislation we think is coming. And the challenge is, some of you who are dealing with it know, it's not the same. We're not we're a country of 50 states, and there's a chance we could have 50 different rules at some point, which makes it a challenge because you're what works in one place doesn't work in another. So it's become a very important focus in how we drive what we do to improve that value chain.
Yeah, absolutely. Gotta run through the raindrops on that one. So yeah.
I wish. I'm a big guy. I don't get to miss many raindrops. But to your point, it is, I mean, now I will say this. I think that there is benefits to some policy, so this is not a bash EPR thing. I think figuring out what's the best type though, and my opinion is there isn't a perfect one,
Right.
but trying to make it the best as possible is what's important.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Give me thoughts on the cardboard front.
I think that, we share the same concern about the state. We've been impacted in if we look at it in different places, but it's a hard one for me personally because I think paper recycling is such a environmental success story, and people have worked hard to build this industry. There's strong emphasis on collection and then seeing that to end markets, and I think that's one of the challenges that where you have these challenged, responsible end markets where, what are we going to do with that material? So some of that's a personal bent, but at IP, we team up very closely with our sustainability and government relations colleagues and try to dig in and contribute to industry groups, our own, how we are thinking about things, et cetera. But yeah, it's a hard question to answer.
I know. Yeah. Anybody else have questions? Yeah.
Much better. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the whole panel for being here and thank Harris American for the sponsorship of this session. But I want to address specifically EPR. In the session that was in this room right before, that was addressed, and it's really the hot topic. And it came up that they're expecting at least a draft this next Congress for a nationwide EPR. So that's going to be evolving in the next couple sessions, and I'm hoping to see more of the paper stock industry involved in some of those discussions on the advocacy with the GA and GR, because I had never heard that until today. And EPR for paper and plastic's been a big discussion, but now metals engaged and all commodities across ReMA are more engaged. And I think we have a lot of experience from the paper side to bring to that discussion and craft the right kind of language. Obviously, everybody's leaning more into the battery side of it, but the language is going to impact everybody if it's a nationwide. So that would be fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I had not heard that either, so thank you for sharing that. Great.
Hey, I've got a question. Hi, guys in the back. Sean with WM. For Jason, wondering, could you elaborate on the paper-based packaging a little more? Like, where are you trialing that, and what has the reception been like throughout the recycling value chain, such as it is?
You mean for that paper-based barrier?
Yes.
So it is, we've done it in Japan and we have done it in Europe. And so far the response with the recycling infrastructure has been very good. It's very limited. I mean, this is still a big time work in progress. And I think we're on version 1. And I think when it will probably touch the shores here is when we're another version or 2 in, because it's, it has to be balanced with the package still has to protect at the same level. So you got to make sure that as it moves, the technology of our machines move and everything else. But the overall feedback, Sean, has been actually pretty good. The thing to say is this. So in a typical paper mill situation that's getting the material, the aluminum actually doesn't play a huge deal. Depends. Some people, if they beat it up a little too much, they could create an issue, but for the most part, it doesn't. But the assumption is that with the paper-based barrier, if it did get free, it'd be paper.
Okay. And follow up while I'm hot here for Brian on the topic of SOP. I agree with you about the slow decline, but one thing as we manage a large amount of that grade as well, one thing we have a hard time getting at is the effect of records management. And so material coming out of there, it's eventually the warehouses will be empty. Have you guys looked into that at all? And I'm just, I'll ask anybody and everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree. Records management, as those age out, that those historical records will get shredded and destroyed and end up in the SOP stream. I think I haven't done any personal research lately to see, as more and more records move to electronic versus paper storage, but I would just, personally assume that, I think about like my taxes. I don't have a hard copy. It's all filed on my computer and on my hard drives and things. And so as we, more and more records move electronically stored, that's going to have an impact on less records to be stored, physical hard copy record storage.
Thanks.
Do you know what, or do you guys have an idea what you think it's going to come up?
No, we don't have the folks that operate records management, in my experience, are very protective about inventory size.
Mm-hmm.
And, for, I'd say the last 5 years, the decline in office waste that we manage that we've been expecting it to drop off a cliff, and there hasn't been a cliff. It's been a very mellow hill, if anything. So, but we keep expecting the other shoe to drop. So it's this just ongoing question that we're waiting to learn the answer on.
When I used to work in our paper business, which we don't even own it anymore, but this was like, I worked in a strategy, rolled in, and we just studied it ad nauseum. Like, it's like, how much is this thing declining? There was a theory at some point that there is a certain amount of paper needed in a developed economy. But I mean, if you look at I would argue that, and it's been a long time since I've been in that people have been flattening that curve out over time and would have said it flattened out by 2020. And it's still on a downward trajectory, but that was a theory back in the day that, there was a certain amount of paper consumption in a developed economy. So whether that holds today, I don't know.
But is there, I guess I'm asking both of you now, but is there a COVID effect? Because truly what happened in 2020 was not just a 5 or 7% drop. Right. That was a off the cliff. And if records are kept for, 7 years, whatever it is, are we approaching D-Day? Because I don't believe much was probably put in 2020 or in less than 21. You know what I mean?
I understand what he's asking.
I wonder if you guys hear that.
I'm in complete agreement.
You are?
Yeah, I think that, I think that the records management outflow is maybe artificially bolstering the drop. Are we saying the same thing? I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I've never thought about it from that point of view. I've always thought about it from a production, because we were a mill, but I totally understand what you're getting at. There's definitely an outbound flow from those facilities, no doubt.
I would say 1 to 3, but it's not much different than what Brian's reporting.
Because you're right, because they have to keep the records for 7 years, and then
They'll keep them forever.
Exactly.
As long as you pay them, they'll send you a bill.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. They don't want to remind you of it.
No. But the input those years had to have been way lower.
Right. Now I agree. You would think, though, that there would be some minimum of paper kept just because of the way people are able to hack into, records and all that. You would think that you would want some kind of a hard copy. At least for me personally, I've been hacked before, but I don't know if that it would play into it or not. People just throw caution to the wind and hope they don't get hacked. All right. Anybody else have any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. Mike.
So I hear, okay, we are on. So I hear kind of two sides of the problem up there. One with white fiber declining, having trouble getting that supply. But on the other side of the stage, you have Tetra Pak coming in with their aseptic packaging and such. Has there been any work to try to supplant that source material, that SOP, and not end up in a mixed waste stream or a OCC stream?
Yes, there has been. I mean, we've been doing a lot of work for a while to get it into the grade 52, the PSI spec. And there are a number of folks who do it, and there are a number of folks who put it in mixed paper. And we believe the better place for it to be is in that designated stream for that reason, because then you have that ability for folks to access that fiber for what it's really needed for, be it a tissue mill, be it a high level packaging, something like that. Look, the other reason we're also interested in it is, I'll take it a step further. This is not the paper part of the discussion, but you have the poly and the aluminum. Mm-hmm. And we also feel that if it's in the mixed paper, while again, it can be recycled, it gets recycled, the likelihood of capturing the residual is low because it is mixed with everything else that's spit out in the mixed paper pulper. You put it into a pulping system that's focused on that commodity. Now you have actually an ability to hopefully recapture that. And while that's not immediate, it is something that we know is going to happen, and we want to have happen. So there's a lot of activity in that.
So I'll admit that's a bit of a personally loaded question. My company, and particularly my wife, have worked with you guys a lot on that pulping technology. So just like to hear that there's some way that we're driving the market to actually use it.
Yes. And that's when I say it's the interest continues to grow. I mean, there are people who are seeing the value in it. And again, part of it is by necessity, because as what used to be an easy product to use for their new product goes away, you got to look for something else.
Good question. Anybody else have anything?
Hey, I've got one over here.
Matt?
Brian, more for you. You mentioned in your slides just the export of SOP to Asia, or to India, Latin America. Is that mostly feeding tissue production? Is that kind of what's driving that?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Tissue production globally will continue to grow as those third world countries get access to and have their consumer spending continue to grow, and be able to utilize those kind of tissue products.
And is that mostly white grades, or is there also a demand for brown grades to make brown towel and tissue?
Brown will end up in some brown toweling, but my focus is more on the white grade analysis at that time.
Anything else? It's quiet. Okay, so on that then, so we're seeing more and more, if you go to a recycling plant and you look in their coated book pile, you're going to see a lot of groundwood in there. And it seems to me like more mills are able to handle that. Is that something you see continuing, that groundwood is going to be more acceptable and the mills have the technology now to run it where it doesn't just go down the drain?
Yeah, it's going to be customer dependent, to say broadly that, the industry will shift to more of a diverse SOP pack. I think, to your point, Jason, it's going to be very customer dependent on what their technology is, what their capability, what they can run at their particular mill to make their product line. And so we as packers, commercial, like our group, our recycling management resource plants, we make a very specific pack for our customers. And so we have to know what their technology is, what they can use, mm-hmm. and what we make for one customer at one recycling plant will not work at another customer that we make at another recycling plant. And so that's where we create value, is meeting with our customers and understanding what the specific grade pack needs to be and having the different parts of it. It's not a straight, shredded blend like from a mobile shredder. It can include other components, whether it's groundwood, whether it's some SBS grades of material, Tetra Pak. We ask those kind of questions and find out and work with them and provide testing and give them ways to, test that and use it to make their products.
You see, though, as generation is down, not just office paper, but, work with a lot of printers. I mean, their generation is down as well. A lot of them are digital online. They don't print, packets anymore. I mean, you see mills looking for alternatives like groundwood, like, maybe more book, things like that.
Yeah, I think again, it varies, and they're looking for alternative ways. I know one mill that was trying to do some testing of trying to recover their tissue and toweling from the restrooms to try to recapture that and bring it back. And so they're all looking at, how can they continue to make their products with a diverse raw material.
I mean, I think the industry is going to have to innovate because, I can go back in my history, but like there are grades that don't exist anymore, and that'll continue to happen. And so, the industry, meaning all sides of it, are going to have to figure it out, because I'd like to say to people when we're trying to get them to use Tetra Pak or cartons in there as an office pack replacement, if you bet your life on office pack in the future, you might have a problem getting it. So you got to figure out a way to use something else.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you think about like insulators that use a lot of news. Well, when was the last time anybody who has a newspaper?
Molded pulp.
Think about it. You got to kind of be flexible and
the industry's always done it.
Right.
That's the other thing. Like, it's not like this is a new challenge. I mean, for years it's happened.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Does anybody have anything else? Thoughts? Comments? Okay. Well, we did good on time. It's a little bit after 2:00. I guess if we don't have anything else, we can wrap it up a little bit early. Works for y'all. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
This was great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.